So they don't have anything to do with Saul. But Barnabas took hold of it and brought him to the apostles and described to them how he had seen the Lord on the road, and that he had talked to him, and how he had spoken out boldly in the name of Jesus at Damascus. Now then, my question is, who is Saul, or who is Barnabas? All right, got anyone? Who is old Barnabas? Well, today's the day that you get to learn something that you may not know, because we're going to find out who Barnabas is. Now then, when we talk about the Apostle Saul or the Apostle Paul, he is without a doubt the most significant figure in the New Testament. Now then, when we think about it, he had a lot of companions that traveled with him. Now, we think that Paul wrote the majority of the New Testament, but folks, he didn't. One of his traveling companions, Luke, by volume writes most of the New Testament. Paul, on the other hand, writes 13 of the 27 books of the New Testament. But when we look at the books that he's written and who he is written to, folks, it's like Paul is writing a letter not to these individuals or to these particular churches, but if you sit down and actually read these epistles, they are written to you as an individual. They're written to me, and it is as if Paul, 2,000 years later, is talking to us. And that's why I really do love my American Standard Version. It takes the these and the thous and the old English language out of it, and it puts it more into language that we can understand today, just like it's talking to me and you. And that's what's going on here at this particular time. So Saul, when we talk about it, he is fixing to join Barnabas, and the two of them are fixing to go to Antioch. Now then, Barnabas, he is the very first traveling companion of Paul's. His first name is Joseph. Now then, he's a Levite, he's a Cyprus, but the name Barnabas itself means son of encouragement. So Barnabas is going to stay with Paul on this first missionary trip, first journey. So he's instrumental in Paul's conversion of Damascus. He's there. He takes Paul back to Jerusalem. He vouches for him with the disciples. He tells them what he did back in Damascus, and we know that from here in Acts 9:27. So Barnabas and Paul are commissioned by the Holy Spirit to go to the church at Antioch. So once they leave Jerusalem, they're going to travel 400 miles to Antioch. Now then, as we look at this, what is the importance of Antioch? Do you know? Yes.
It was the Gentile church, which was like the mirror image of the Jerusalem church of Jews.
Yes. Antioch is the third largest city in the world in the first century. The only cities that are larger is Rome and Antioch. Now, you remember I talked about the story of Jews, those who decided to stay north. They began to intermarry, but yet they still believed in the prophets and the scriptures. Now, these are the Hellenistic Jews. This being the third largest, have I got it up there? If you can see where Antioch is located, all the way over there on the right. All right. Though it is 9 miles from the Mediterranean Sea, it is a seaport in itself, in that it is built on a large river. Let's see, have I got it there? Yeah. That said, you have people from all over the world, because of its location. Let's go back to that. Because of its location, it can disperse people throughout the known world, especially Gentiles. And that is what Barnabas and Paul's mission is going to be, is to spread the gospel to the Gentiles. So it makes sense that this is going to be the first place that God is going to send him on his missionary journey, is to witness and to testify to all these Hellenistic Jews because of their, number one, political affiliation, and number two, because of their location. Here, the word is going to spread throughout the known world, especially the Roman Empire during this time. So, this is what is left of the main street of Antioch today. It's in Turkey. It's still an important city. It's a flourishing city. It looks like any modern day city would today. Next on the hit parade, and I'm fixing to give you these people who are Paul's traveling companions, so that when we get to them in our study, we're not got to stop and explain who they are again. Next is going to be somebody we all know, and that is going to be John Mark, simply known as Mark in the Bible, and what is his importance. Anyway, what is the importance of old Mark? Well, he wrote a book in the Bible. Not a very big book, but anyway, he still wrote a book in the Bible. He was one of the earliest traveling companions of Paul. Now then, when Paul writes to the Galatians, he's actually writing to Mark. But come find out, he's going to be a relative to Barnabas. They're going to be cousins. And we know that in Acts chapter 13. All right, so Mark returned to Jerusalem early because he has a disagreement with Paul and Barnabas. So he just says, heck with y'all, I'm going back to Jerusalem. So there he is going to plan the second missionary journey, and he will rejoin Paul. Now then, we see that in Acts chapter 15. So, as we begin to pick up our study, Paul is eventually going to make up with Mark. We see it in the letters to Timothy, to 2 Timothy, and we're going to see it again in the letters to the church of Philippi. So they're going to make up, they're going to make amends, and Mark is going to be a very influential traveling companion, but he is very important in the scriptures. Any questions about John Mark? Next is going to be Silas. Silas in the Bible, who is he? Well, he is Paul's main traveling companion after he splits up with Barnabas. Now then, he's chosen by Paul for his second missionary journey. We see that in Acts chapter 15. Saul was a leader in the church at Jerusalem, and it also says that he was a prophet. So I find that pretty significant in that I've always thought, and you know, if you really get into the Bible, who was the last prophet? Who do we think the last prophet? Malachi?
I would say John. It's
What?
Revelation.
Yeah,
I would say John, because of Revelation.
John the Revelation. Now then, so it's the only one I think of until I'm told this, that he was also a prophet. And you know, it's just something that maybe you read over or you don't notice. And it's just like a little speck in there that he was a prophet. And folks, this guy had some important, he played an important role. Now then, he's going to go to prison with Paul. He's going to be thrown in prison at Philippi. And it is there that we're going to read how it's their prayers that causes a miraculous jailbreak, and they just walk out of prison. And I think that's pretty significant. You see that in the 16th chapter. So Silas, he's steadfast. He helps Paul both practically and spiritually, and he helps him in his ministry. Paul continues to write about Silas in his letters in 2 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, 1 and 2 Thessalonians. So Silas is very important. Any questions about Silas? Next is going to be Timothy. Now, Timothy, he's another traveling companion of Paul's. Paul describes him as his spiritual son in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 2. Now, Paul first met Timothy in Lystra, and during his second missionary, I am freezing to death. Are y'all coming?
The heat on this side's not working.
Heat on this side's not working. Well,
We got high system.
all right, we're going to have to move. We're going to have to twist the room around. I need to be on that side over yonder. Yes,
This is the side that's not working right here.
that side over there is not working.
I'm gonna have to check this one.
Well,
You're gonna have to get up, move around, teacher.
woo, you got to do something, I'm telling you. I'm old.
Put the jacket back on.
That'd work with my big body. Okay, let's talk about Timothy. Timothy is very unique in that he is going to be kind of like Paul. He's going to be of mixed heritage. So his mother's going to be Jewish and his father's going to be Greek. Now then, we see that, and that's going to be unique in that he has been taught this Hellenistic culture. He speaks Greek instead of Aramaic, but he probably speaks Aramaic as well. So he's going to be important as he travels exclusively with Paul. Paul gives him specific instructions, and he is delegated to delivering the letters that he's going to write to the different churches and to the different people. Yes.
I got a question to be clear from that. You're talking about the Hellenistic Jews. Are they truly of Jewish heritage, or are they Greeks that have adopted Judaism?
No, they are of Jewish heritage. They're the ones that come out of Assyria, out of Babylon and the Assyrian Empire, that were taken custody when the king allowed them to come back. they decided to stay because they fall into this culture, they fall into this trap. They've married women or they've married men. So they believe the Hebrew faith.
Does that put Timothy in the same level as the Samaritans or the half Jewish and half Gentile?
Yes?
But he could also be all Jewish if he Greek, but his father was a Jewish Greek, or Greek.
But his mother, we know his mother was Jewish.
Yeah, but his father could have been a Jew, just a Greek. Which one?
Yes,
His mother
Yes.
was Eunice.
yes. What?
His mother was Eunice.
His mother was Jewish, yes.
Eunice.
Eunice, yes. See, that's why I got y'all in here to keep me straight. Yes. Mentioned in the Bible. Yes, yes, yes. Anything else? See how these people coming together? We don't even think about them. We just read past them or go by them. But anyway, Timothy is going to be very, very important. Now then, the reason he is going to be important to us is that he delivers these different letters. Paul writes about him to some great extent in Philippians and in 1 Corinthians. So that's it. Next is going to be one of my favorites is going to be Luke. I mean, every one of us had to read Luke over the last month. You know? The story of Jesus' birth, I mean, it comes from there. Now, Luke is a physician. He's a doctor. He is going to also be the author, and it is going to be Luke who's going to write the largest volume of the New Testament. In it, he writes Acts, or Book of Acts, and he's going to give us a detailed account of Paul's journeys, the things that Paul gets into. He's going to have a close association with Paul. Now then, Luke joins Paul on his second missionary journey. And if we did a study just on the second trip, there is so much significance and so much importance as to how many churches are going to be established at this time. Now, and we're going to get there. I'm going to show you the churches in Revelation and give you a map of those. And that's what we think the churches are. Folks, I got news for you. They just a drop in the bucket to the churches that Paul and these men are going to create and form. We'll get to those in a moment. But Paul is there. Luke is there. Luke is going to be with him to the bitter end. He's going to visit him in the prison back in Rome. It is it is Luke that is going to bring him food, deliver his letters. This guy, we can't underestimate or understate the importance he is to the New Testament. So, that said, we're going to look at the other traveling companions here as well. Now, we got Titus. Let's talk about Titus. Did I make a note on him? I hope I did. Yes, I did. Okay. Anybody know anything about Titus?
And he was 100% Greek, so he was kind of foil character too. He was half Jewish.
He was 100% Greek. That is another way of saying he was a Gentile. Folks, that makes him like me and you. Does it not? He was a Gentile. Yes. He was a co-worker of Paul. Especially on the island of Crete. We see this in Titus chapter 1. he resolves the conflict. Now, this is going to be important for us. He resolves the conflict over this deal about circumcision. The Jews said, hey, you're going to be a follower of the Hebrew faith, you got to be circumcised. They brought this into Christianity also, but it is going to be Titus that says, whoa, wait a minute, let's take a look at this. And therefore, that circumcision now is just more or less a symbolism, so to speak. Then we're going to have Priscilla and Aquila. Now these folks are going to be close friends of Paul's. He probably knew them because they were tent makers also. They worked with him in Corinth and Ephesus. They provided him with spiritual support, financial support, and Paul writes, or Luke writes about them in Acts and in the book of Romans. Then we're going to have this guy, who is, I hope I can pronounce that right.
Epaphras.
Say it.
Epaphras.
Yes, very good. He's a fellow worker. He founded the church at Colossus. He was praised by Paul. He was constantly in prayer for Paul and for the church. So it is important to know that he is going to be the one that's going to start one of these churches. And then we're going to have Aristarchus, I guess. Aristarchus. You know, I'm glad I got you.
And he was in prison with Paul when he was in Rome.
He is. He is going to be chunked in prison with Paul. He provides us. Give me a moment.
That's a great name, is he Greek?
Yeah. Y'all give me a moment, Hannah. Whew. I had one of them Mayfield moments. Can you tell us any more about him, Mark?
I don't know much more about him other than he's a fellow prisoner. He's fully Greek.
Okay. Now tell us about this guy, Keith.
He just went all over with Paul. He was the one that delivered a lot of false messages. He was a preacher. Paul mentions him in several others.
Okay.
Important worker.
These are,
And he's also the one that brought Onesimus back to Philemon. At the end of Colossians, he says, Tychicus will tell you all the news about me. And he traveled with Onesimus back to Colossae and returned to Philemon.
so all these are important people in the New Testament. They're important people to Paul, and they're important in the starting of the new church. Now then, next week, Mark is going to pick up with you in verse 28, and you'll carry on from there. I'm gonna ask you to do the next week because I'm gonna have some little heart procedure done. So I don't know how long. Really?
Dennis, you okay?
No.
No, you're not, I tell you not.
Okay. That's it. Here are your 7 churches. They're the churches in Asia Minor. Now then, for us, it's not just these churches, but I want you to look at all the churches that are going to be started by Paul and by the people that we just mentioned. And we'll get into that in great detail, and Mark's going to carry that.